All right, let's recap then on what happened. South Africans who cast their ballots are hoping for major improvements to infrastructure and the supply of basic services, really. Power and electricity have been huge talking points ahead of this election. You'll remember, particularly in Soweto. Eskom has been demanding that the township repay billions of rand owed to the utility. So what is Soweto hoping for in the next 5 years? The Soweto Electricity Crisis Committee member, Dr. Trevor Ngwane, joins me now to talk issues of elections as well as that situation in Soweto, particularly with electricity. Dr. Trevor Ngwane, thank you and good afternoon. Welcome to eNCA. I think firstly, let me just start with your perspectives on the voter turnout, because that's really the big story out of this election. If communities are irked enough by issues of service delivery, including electricity issues, why do you believe we are not seeing, we didn't see voter turnout being what we had expected? I mean, it really is low. It's said to be the lowest it's been since 1994. What's your sense? I know it's a complex matter, but what is your main sense of what's happening?
Yeah, thanks, Tulas. I think the voters are losing confidence in their own power to change things, to change history. They are also losing confidence in the system. You know, they think their vote doesn't make a difference. And I think there's a real overburdening sense of desperation because of the everyday crisis, you know, poverty, unemployment. So, you know, the lack of hope, you know, has become hopelessness. The lack of trust has become distrust. So that's where we are at the moment. It's desperation.
And as I was grappling with this, Dr. Trevor Ngwane, and the IEC is warning, rightly so, that voter turnout is a multifaceted phenomenon which is influenced by many factors. Fair enough, and it's granted. But as I was grappling with this, I was asking myself, to what extent do we have a truly and deeply entrenched culture of protest, in that if you were to look at what Ipsos was telling us about the levels of community protests and the belief that those are effective in getting services delivered, and you juxtapose it with the levels of, you know, going the formal route of voting, and now going to the extent that some actually perhaps could have been using this election as a form of protest, the non-participation as a form of protest, perhaps that talking to our culture of protest. What do you make of that?
Well, unfortunately, Chulasizwe, you know, the people who don't go and vote tend also to be people who are passive, who don't participate a lot in protest, unless there's an organized, you know, maybe boycott movement or spoil the ballot movement among the protesters. So, you know, it's not the case that if people don't vote, then they're going to be joining social movements or local community groups. Instead, what will happen when they are really pushed is what we saw recently in July, you know, with the attacks on the malls, which was disorganized and very costly because more than 300 people died. So those are acts of desperation of people who are not organized, who are just responding, you know, in knee-jerk fashion to the pain of a harsh, hard daily existence.
So let's get then to the issue of, you know, one of the big contentious issues ahead of the elections, electricity supply. We saw it come back to haunt the ANC president in particular, Cyril Ramaphosa, while campaigning out in Soweto. What do you think these results mean for resolution of such big service delivery issues such as electricity, for example?
Yes, but I just talked about that July, people call it the civil unrest. What happened afterwards? I mean, it was supposed to be a wake-up call. What did the ANC government do? You know, what did the elite of the country do? Nothing, okay? They did restore the tokenistic 350 Rand, COVID relief fund, but that is as much as they did. Very few, if not zero, of the political parties campaigned on a basic income grant, something which can help, to alleviate the suffering of the millions and millions. From that point of view, I have no hope that the electricity crisis is going to be addressed, with any better way after this election. Indeed, I would argue, Chulas, that, with ESCOM going to be unbundled, be divided into three, units, generation, transmission, etc., it shows further privatization, commercialization, commodification of energy supply. And actually, that commodification, the idea that someone must make a profit from providing energy, is at the heart of the crisis.
So lastly then, what have you made of the moves that have been announced very closely, interestingly closely to the elections by City Power, the leadership of the city of Joburg, Mwerane and others, about procuring from Kelvin Power Station, shielding Joburg from the stage 1, 2 of load shedding and power cuts, but also looking more to be independent of ESCOM and wanting to take over the supply of electricity to Soweto. That's similar to what, for instance, the DA has been saying about more independence from, what ESCOM supplies, which they say they've been practicing in the Western Cape or trying to entrench in the Western Cape. Right now, we don't know who will run the city of Joburg, but these parties have been speaking this language of, finding solutions outside of ESCOM.
Yeah, Chuda, there's something you don't know about me. My village is Mutu. So those small towns, small villages, they don't have enough of a tax base to address all their needs. So that's the crisis of local government. So it's not a good idea that the big metros are going to come up with solutions which only address their own base, as it were, and leave the rest of South Africa, villages, shack settlements, townships, miring in the crisis of electricity. In any case, if City Power takes over provision of electricity in Soweto, it will immediately lead to a price increase, because remember, Soweto is provided direct by ESCOM, and City Power will add a markup. So these are just delaying tactics and not addressing the key issue. The key issue is that everyone, every business, every person has a right, to a reliable, affordable, clean energy supply. And we should not add profit, to the provision of basic services.
All right, Trevor Ngwane, thank you for your time and your insights here on eNCA, reflecting the morning after the elections, the voting day, as we crunch the numbers and see what they mean for the governance of the various cities and towns across the country.